Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on Symphony here at GEO Jobe. So I know we've got a couple of people still trickling in at the moment, but whilst they're doing so, I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping points. So if you look, you should see near the top of your Teams bar these options. And I just wanted to let you know that we do currently have the chat enabled. So by all means, feel free to put any comments in there, chat with other people whilst the webinar is going on. However, if you do have any questions for us specifically while this is going on, we do have Q&A enabled. So any questions that you'd like us to answer, please put them in there. I do have a couple of my coworkers here going through the chat, keeping an eye on things, and they'll be responding to you throughout. And we do also have a dedicated Q&A section towards the end of our webinar today. So next thing before we get into everything, I want to let you know we appreciate you all for being here today. And so we are going to be giving away a map this bundle. So make sure you stay till the end for more details on that. But as you can see, we have a number of items that are going to be included in the bundle. So once again, thank you so much for attending today. And now let me introduce the team. So I'm Tony. I'm a customer success manager here at GEO Jobe. I've been working here a couple of years. A few of y'all have probably talked to me before already. I've also got Rachel here with me, one of our senior developers. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cohen. I'm a senior application developer. I'm the main developer for Symphony, and I work on several of the other products as well.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I've also got Karen here with me. She's one of our sales engineers, and she's going to be keeping an eye on the questions coming through the chat and helping during the Q&A section.
Yeah, I'm Karen Henderson. I've been doing GIS for the last 20 years, local, state, federal government mostly, and also some nonprofits. I've been helping mostly in the Southeast to design and provide management and workflow solutions. Been here at GEO Jobe for the last 2 years, collaborating with our customers and seeing how GEO Jobe can best support them.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all both so much for helping out today. They are some real smart cookies that we've got here at GEO Jobe. So whilst we go through and prepare and let everyone finish trickling in, I'm going to kind of tell everybody a little bit about what GEO Jobe is and what we do, because I do see a couple of new faces here today. So we were originally founded in Nashville, Tennessee, back in 1999 by Neil Jobe. And he originally, when we set up office, we offered professional services, GIS training, sold GIS equipment. But since then, we have migrated down to the Gulf Coast and are currently headquartered in Gulfport, Mississippi, and now focus on creating services and offering a suite of products that are designed to simplify the lives of GIS users. In fact, when Admin Tools was released, it was released in 2014 alongside ArcGIS Online, and since then it has become one of the most popular tools you can find on the AGL marketplace. We've been an Esri business partner since 2002. Currently, we are a platinum partner with them, and we work very closely as a partner to make sure that our products stay up to date with any new features and applications that they're rolling out. We've got customers all over the world. You can see that we've got strong presences in the US, the AU, the EU, and it's really cool for me, especially since we just started in Nashville, to now see that we've got people all over utilizing the products that we have today. So we do offer a wide range of services. So we've got a couple of divisions to break it down into. First off, our support division. Anyone who has any of our products, use any of our services, has access to our support team. I am notorious here at GEO Jobe for breaking things, so I hit them up all the time, and I could say that they are a fantastic group of people. They do a lot of really good work, and a lot of our customers feel very comfortable with them around. We've also got our GIS services division. They consist of GIS professionals that handle deployments of Esri's desktop, server, web, and mobile applications. There are a lot of talented folks that do data creation, staff augmentation, augmentation and create models and do a lot of very detailed work with our clients. We've also got a software development division that consists primarily of two teams. Our products division, which is going to be the people who put together the Symphony that we're going to be reviewing today. And essentially they specialize on making general products for the wide GIS community. But then we also have a professional services team that goes through and makes very specific custom solutions for the unique problems that many of our clients may have. We've also got a UAV UAS division. They focus on the collection and processing of geospatial data through unmanned area vehicles, flying drones, collecting imagery, and lots of data. Reed is our guy who's behind that. He's done some amazing work. In fact, he has a channel on LinkedIn specifically for the UAV, and if you've not ever seen it, I highly recommend checking out. He's got some lovely photos, especially of the snow we recently had on the Gulf Coast here last year. Next up, finally, we've got finally but not least, the data science division. They prepare geospatial data, including the cleansing, aggregating, and manipulation of data to perform advanced analysis, using machine learning to really delve deep into that data. So before I get ready to let Rachel go through the detailed review of our Symphony product, we do have a question that we'd like to have everybody answer, if you don't mind. And essentially, we're just wondering, for all of those watching here with us today, if you're primarily using ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS on Enterprise, or perhaps both of those. And we mainly ask because whilst all of our products are compatible with both, there can be some differences. And so we're just very curious to see who all is attending today and what the primary platform that's being utilized. So I'm going to give just a few moments here to let everybody answer that question. And then once we get that done, we'll work on going through Symphony. So I'm going to give it just a few moments here. And also, I did want to ask, I know we've got quite a few people here today. If you're comfortable sharing, please put in the chat where you're joining us from. It'd be really cool to see where everybody's watching from and where everybody's participating. I know for the time zones, for some people, it might be really early, it might be really late, but it'd be really cool to see where everybody's watching all of this from. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get started on the review of Symphony, orchestrating an automated Symphony for your ArcGIS environment. So I'm going to pass it over to Rachel, and here we go.
This is Symphony for ArcGIS. Symphony is GEO Jobe's most recent product. And some of you may already be familiar with Scheduler for ArcGIS, which was formerly the name of Symphony for ArcGIS. So essentially, Scheduler was rebranded as Symphony, and we also have Symphony now as essentially our platform for dependent applications. So Scheduler is a dependent application within Symphony. There are two other dependent applications within Symphony. You'll see Manage My Attachments and Architecture Viewer. We're going to cover both of those in a later webinar. For this webinar, we're going to be focused on Scheduler. So Scheduler is our no-code workflow builder. It lets you create tasks that you can run on a schedule or that are triggered by a variety of different trigger options or on demand. You can see here, this task table shows all the different tasks that you've created. You can see the different organizations that the task runs for. So you can have a task run for whatever organizations you want it to run for. So, for example, if you have a dev environment and a prod environment, you can have a task run for both of those environments. You can see also we have the different things that will cause a task to run. So a task can be run on demand. So anytime you want to run it, you just go in here and click this button. A task can be run on a schedule. So every X minutes, hours, days, etc. You can choose certain days of the week and certain times of the day. So you can say that you want the task to run during business hours, not during business hours, only on the weekends, not on the weekends, things like that. We have tasks that can be triggered by events in the ArcGIS server logs, which I'm going to get into in just a minute. We also have tasks that can be triggered by webhooks, which I'm also going to cover shortly. And we have tasks that can be triggered by events in ArcGIS Monitor. So, for those of you who have ArcGIS Monitor, Scheduler can actually connect to ArcGIS Monitor. You just put in the URL of your Monitor instance and your credentials. Scheduler can then interact with ArcGIS Monitor, and when ArcGIS Monitor generates an alert, so for example, ArcGIS Monitor can generate alerts for things like, let's say a service is being slow if the response time gets above a certain amount, or a service drops a certain number of requests. That will trigger an alert in Monitor. What Scheduler can do is watch Monitor, detect those alerts, and then trigger a task in Scheduler based on those alerts. So for example, Monitor can detect that a service is being slow. Scheduler can restart it. So, Scheduler and Monitor do slightly different things, but Scheduler can actually interact with Monitor, and it can be used to get more out of Monitor as well for those of you who have Monitor. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a task here. So you can see here we have this configure steps table. So this is where each task is made up of one or more steps, and these steps can be chained together in various ways. We also have this visual view. This shows how the information progresses through the task. You can see for each step, you have one option for successful results, one option for failed results. So this lets you create a task that will take a different path depending on what happens. So in this case, if this first step fails, we don't want it to do the rest of the steps. We just want it to exit reporting failure. This validation step, if this succeeds and there's no problem, we want it to exit reporting success here. We don't want it to go through and do the rest of the steps. These are only if there's a problem. So that's just another way to make your tasks more flexible, and to get more out of them is to have different workflows and different paths that content can take. There are a variety of tools that you can use in Scheduler. So we have options to find and export content. So you can do things like export items to CSV. You can do things like find services by number of features. So let's say you want to generate a report, and you can do this on a schedule. So let's say every week, first thing on Monday morning, you want to generate a CSV of all the content that's been created in the past week. And you also want to create a CSV of all of the services with at least 1 million features. You can have that on a regular basis. You can have an email to you. You can set up your email server, and any task, any results can be emailed to you, and you can get that report on a regular basis. We also have options to export users and groups. You can do things like find users by number of items. So let's say if you have users who have a user type that allows them to own items, but they don't own any items, that can be an indication that that user is a test user, or someone who has left your organization, or otherwise a user who is no longer active, who you don't need anymore, and that can help you with cleaning up your users. We have a variety of update options, so you can add items to categories, add and remove. You can add and remove tags, add and remove categories. You can share and unshare items. You can add and remove tags to groups. You can add and remove users and items from groups. You can add and remove tags to users. You can email users. And you can, if you have a step that's creating a CSV, for example, a report, you can have that CSV filtered by owner when you're emailing users. So you can send a user a CSV that only contains their content. So let's say you have a validation step that I'm going to cover in a minute that finds a set of items that have a certain set of problems. You can divide those items up by owner and send each owner a CSV with only their items that have failed the validation. And then it can be on the user who owns those items to take whatever steps are needed to fix the items. And in that way, rather than you as the administrator having to go in and fix all of the items yourself, you can distribute some of that work among the owners of the items, and that can free up your time as well. You can enable, disable users, remove entitlements, and update type and role. This can be useful if you have, for example, users who haven't logged in for a certain period of time. You can disable them. You can remove any entitlements they have. And you can, for example, downgrade them to viewer. So if they have a creator license type, you only get so many of those. If that license type is assigned to someone who is no longer active in your organization, that is, wasting that license type. So you can downgrade that user to viewer, free up that license type, and then it will be available to be assigned to people who are actually active in your organization. We also have, as I mentioned, a variety of validation options. So you can, for example, validate item details. So let's say you have a publicly shared group and you want to make sure that all the items in that group have a description and that they have the credits attribution property filled out. You can go ahead and do that. Here, you can select those two options, and then you can, when the task runs, it will run those checks. It will look for any items in that group that don't have those properties filled out. And then, as I mentioned before, the next step in that task could be to email the owners of those items, send them each a CSV of their items and say, these items failed this validation. They don't have the description and credits filled out. Please make sure that you fill out those properties. We also have this validate text and service field attributes. This is really useful from a kind of security privacy point of view. So let's say you have a service that contains sensitive information like social security numbers, and you need that information for your organization, but obviously it would be a big problem if that information was shared publicly and if that service was shared publicly. So Scheduler can actually go through, look at your services, and it can look at the attributes and search for text that either matches or doesn't match a particular expression. So for example, you could put in a regular expression for social security numbers, and then you could have the task check, and any services that it finds with attributes whose text matches that expression, you could do something like automatically unshare that service or email the owner of that service or tag that service or something like that. And then we also have, this is the same option for, service field names, the same as the attributes, just for field names instead. You can also validate service items. So for example, looking for problems with your service items. So a URL that isn't returning a valid response. And then it also checks to make sure that a service has one or more layers and that those layers can be queried. If either of these things is not true, there is likely something wrong with the service that needs your attention. You can also validate group details, and user details as well, similar to item details. You can, for example, find all of your users that don't have MFA enabled and email them, or make sure all of your users have their bio filled out. We have several options here to manage server content, and for this particular task, I'm actually going to switch to an enterprise task. So we have certain tools. The vast majority of our tools, similar to our other products, are available for both ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise, but there are some that are specific to ArcGIS Online and some that are specific to Enterprise, and some of these are more specific to Enterprise. So in addition to connecting to ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise the way other GEO Jobe products do, Symphony is unique in that it can also connect to things other than organizations, and one of those things is ArcGIS server instances. So if you have an ArcGIS server, whether it's federated or not, you can connect to it in Symphony, and then you will have access to the services there and can perform various operations on those services. So for example, you can start and stop services on a schedule or in response to some event. You can update service instance settings. So let's say you want to switch between dedicated and shared, or if you want to switch services to the dedicated instance type, you can also set the minimum and maximum number of instances per machine. There are a variety of options for checking on status and health. So for example, there are several portal and service health check endpoints where you can just make sure the portal is running and healthy. Status. You can export the portal and server logs, and I'm going to get into server logs a little more in a minute. We also have these validate operational health scans where you can check for various issues with your enterprise organization. So for example, check whether a portal for ArcGIS machine is down, or a data store machine is down, or a license is expired, or a license is expiring soon. And these are similar checks also for various security issues. These are checks that are recommended by Esri, and you can find more information about them in the little question circle next to each check. You can also cancel geoprocessing jobs. So let's say a geoprocessing job has been running for over an hour, and you know it definitely shouldn't take that long. Scheduler can just go ahead and cancel that, and the job is stuck, so it just goes ahead and cancels it, and then that will free up resources it can now move on to other jobs. In addition to connecting to ArcGIS server instances, you can also connect to Microsoft SQL Server. And when you do that, you're able to rebuild the indexes. So rebuild indexes is something that's really important to keeping your databases performant, making sure that queries are fast. People often don't think to rebuild the index until something is being slow and someone complains, and then someone says, oh, I guess we better rebuild the index. Versus here, you can schedule that on a regular basis, and you can be proactive, and then you won't have to worry about waiting until something is slow. You can just be reindexing on a regular basis, and you just set it once and forget about it. Monitor changes I'm going to skip for now and come back when I talk about webhooks. Then we also have several miscellaneous options, and one of these is run custom script. So Scheduler is a no-code workflow builder, but if you do have your own custom scripts, you can run them in Scheduler. You can run them either just inputting the file path, or if there are parameters, you can input whatever you would use to run the script in the command line with the parameters and the script command and all that. You can put that in here, and then Scheduler will just run it the same as running from the command line. And you can use this to schedule scripts to just run on a regular basis by themselves. You can also schedule scripts. You can wrap them in out-of-the-box scheduler functionality. So you might want to use one of these out-of-the-box tools, and then, in addition to that, run a script. Or you might have a script that you want to be scheduled by that you want to be triggered by one of Scheduler's triggers. So let's say when a particular type of monitor alert is detected, you then want to have that run a script. So you can do that here as well. And then, if GEO Jobe in general, we are very open to feature requests, and many of our products are very much user feedback driven. But if you have something specific that you would like to do, we also have a professional services team that can write custom scripts. So, if there's something specific that you would want designed to run within Scheduler, our professional services team could work on that as well. So I mentioned earlier that you can connect to ArcGIS server instances, and that when you do, you'll be able to have access to the services. So, in addition to being able to perform tasks on services, you can also view services here in the services viewer. You can see here are all of the services. You can see there's services from multiple ArcGIS server machines all in one place. You can see whether they're started or stopped. You can see their capabilities. You can see their runtime, so whether they're dedicated or shared. And you can also see if you have any services that are still using the old ArcMap runtime. And if that's the case, it's recommended that you upgrade those services, so you can easily find and see what services you have that are still using the ArcMap runtime that need to be updated. You can also see the minimum maximum number of instances, and you can also see schema locking. So if schema locking is enabled on a service, you'll be able to see that here. And then in addition to being able to view and to filter, so you can also filter by a number of these properties. You can perform bulk actions, so you can bulk start and stop services. So let's say you have a bunch of services that you want to restart. You can just select whichever ones you want to restart, and you could stop them and then start them again. Or let's say you have a certain number that are stopped and you want to start them. You could just select the ones that you want and then go ahead and hit start, rather than having to start each of them one by one. And then we also have our service workspace information, this button here. So you can select one or more services, and it brings up this service workspace viewer. And this is something that is an issue a lot of people have, where you want to know what services are using a database. So let's say you want to perform some kind of maintenance to a database, or you want to migrate a database, and you want to know what services will be affected if that database is taken down. You can do that here easily. You can see here are the selected services. You can see where they come from. And then you can also see the source name. So in this case, this could be a GEO database. It can also be, in this case, this is our SQL Server instance. So you can see over here, it will also show you, some of them might be Oracle or Postgres or some other source. Within in this case, SQL Server, you can see the specific database that the service is drawing its data from. And then within that database, you can see the specific table as well. So let's say you want to find all of the services that are using this database. You can do that here. Here they all are. So now if you need to make a change to this GIS test database, you'll be able to see which of your services will be affected by that. And you can also export this information to CSV as well. So I mentioned earlier that you can have tasks that are triggered by webhooks. So webhooks are event listeners that respond when a particular event occurs in your ArcGIS organization. So there are several different types of webhooks that Esri supports. We support 3 types. Organization webhooks are webhooks for items, users, and groups. Those are for ArcGIS Enterprise only. They are not available for ArcGIS Online. And you can see here's some of the different events that are involved with these webhooks. So, for example, a group is updated, a user is enabled, an item is deleted, things like that. And, the webhook will send when an event occurs, it sends a little bit of information called the payload that it sends to the application configured to receive it. And Symphony is already set up to be a receiver for webhooks. So normally you have to create your own receiver. In this case, Symphony is already set up to be a receiver for webhooks. All you need to do is put in the URL where Symphony is running, and then we'll take care of all the rest for you. Create the webhook, it will send its payload to Symphony, and then Symphony will respond to the payload. The payload contains, for example, if an item is updated, the payload will contain the ID of the item that was updated. And then Symphony can then trigger a task that uses that item as its input. We also have service webhooks, which are for ArcGIS Enterprise 11 and above, and for ArcGIS Online. So those cover if a service is things like features are added or deleted, a layer schema is changed, things like that. Those are for feature services that have change tracking enabled, and those allow you to keep track of editing and respond to editing. We also have Survey 123 webhooks, which respond when a survey is added or edited. Those are also for Enterprise 11 and above, and for ArcGIS Online. And you have the ability to trigger tasks based on those as well. And I mentioned earlier that monitor changes section of the tools that I skipped over. So organization webhooks are only available for ArcGIS Enterprise. But if you have ArcGIS Online and you want to respond to changes in this way, those monitor tools will essentially, they are imitation webhooks for ArcGIS Online. So they will take snapshots of item properties or user group properties, whatever it is you tell it to check. And then each time the task runs, it's a scheduled task, it will compare the current state of the item, user, or group to the snapshot, and if it detects any changes, it can then trigger a task based on that. So for example, you can tell it to detect items that have been added. So any item that it finds in the organization when it runs that wasn't in the snapshot, and then that can be the input for the task. And that works in a similar way to a webhook that would be when an item is added. It's not exactly the same because it's scheduled rather than immediate. But it does let you get some of that functionality for ArcGIS Online that isn't available out of the box. And then we also have these event logs. These are for organization webhooks. So these are for ArcGIS Enterprise. And these essentially let you use webhooks to track activity. So in this case, this one is tracking logins. So this is our test organization, and you can see, every time someone has logged in, who that person is. You could also, for example, set one up for when an item is shared publicly, where every time an item is shared publicly, you would see the item, the ID, you could see when it was shared publicly and who shared it. So if something was shared publicly that shouldn't have been, you can go back into your event log And you can look and you can see, first of all, like, how long has that item been publicly shared? And then you could also look and see who shared it, and maybe you need to have a talk with that person. I also mentioned earlier the server logs viewer. So Symphony has, it comes with what we call Symphony Satellite, which is essentially an application that you install directly on the ArcGIS server machine. And it will read the ArcGIS server log files directly out of where they're located on the machine. It will store them in a Mongo database, and then when you request them, it will send them back to the main Symphony application, and you can view them here. So we have this logs viewer here. You can see, this has, different information about the logs. You can see here, and one thing about this, because the information has already been gathered and stored in a more efficient format, it's very fast to search. So you can see here we have 461,000 logs. Searching is instantaneous. And you can search by text in the body of the message. You can search by level. You can search by source, any of these properties, any time range. So that just gives you, an additional way to view the server logs, to filter by more properties, and to be able to filter a lot faster. But beyond that, we're not just using these server logs to create this viewer. You can also actually use them to trigger tasks. So I mentioned that Symphony Satellite is on the ArcGIS server machine on a regular basis. It's checking for new logs, putting them in the database, storing them in that more efficient format. While it's doing that, it can check against filters that you've determined to trigger tasks. So for example, you can have a task triggered when a log with level severe occurs. When Satellite is looking for new logs, if it finds one with level severe, it will then trigger that task. So you can actually respond proactively to the server logs. So a lot of times with the server logs, people don't always think to check them. Usually people check them after something has already gone wrong. Versus with Symphony, you can actually respond proactively to the server logs. And as soon as something goes wrong, you can get an email notification about a log with level severe, about a log with a particular code, and then you can also trigger other tasks as well. So for example, let's say you have you're aware of a log code that indicates a problem with a service, and you have a script that can run that can fix that problem. So you could say every time a log with that code occurs, trigger a scheduler task that would then run that script. And then, so there is a lot of different things that Symphony can be used for, a lot of different industries that could use Symphony and other GEO Jobe products. Just an example use case of how Symphony might be applied in a real life situation. Let's say you have a disaster recovery situation. So, you know ahead of time that, for example, there's a hurricane that's coming that's projected to hit your city, or a blizzard, or some other kind of natural disaster. So beforehand, you can use Symphony to do things like prepare for increased traffic to certain services, and also prepare for reporting in the field. So let's say you have certain services that you know that during the disaster or immediately after the disaster are going to get a lot more traffic than they normally get. You could use Symphony to, before the disaster, you could update the instance type, you could switch it from shared to dedicated, or if it's already dedicated, you can also increase the min and max number of instances. That will ensure that those services have more resources to handle that additional traffic. You can also prepare for, oftentimes there's going to be reporting in the field. So once the disaster hits, there's going to be people out in the field using, for example, Survey 123 to do things like report instances of downed power lines, or trees blocking roads, or flooding, or whatever the case may be. So if you know ahead of time that you're going to be using a lot of Survey 123s, you can set up webhooks for your Survey 123s, and you can also set up a Symphony task for them. So, let's say you have people out in the field doing surveys, and, they're doing a survey for downed power lines. You could have a task set up ahead of time where every time one of those surveys is submitted that somebody reports a downed power line, that task could then, email the relevant person, alert them right away that somebody has submitted a downed power line, and then it would be able to respond to that. You could also, for example, have your webhooks send emails to the users after they submit the survey. So, somebody submits a survey 1, 2, 3, and then, you get an email saying, thank you for, submitting this form. Somebody will be in touch with you, or here are the next steps, or, whatever you want to say. And then you could also set up service webhooks to track editing and email reports of changes. So, there's probably also going to be a lot of activity in certain particular services. So you can prepare for that and, make sure that you're being alerted to any changes, any features that are being added, or things like that, that could indicate activity, for example, out in the field. And then after the disaster, you want to be able to respond quickly to any problems in your environment and manage what will likely also be a fair amount of new content. So, for example, you can set up tasks to detect and restart services that are down. So if you have services that are, for example, being overwhelmed by too many requests, or, if you have services that are going down for some other reason, you always obviously want your services to be running and accessible, but it's particularly important during a disaster that necessary services are up and running. So you could have Symphony checking for those services, checking to see whether they've crashed, and if so, restart them immediately in order to minimize downtime. You can also integrate with Monitor to respond to other problems. So let's say you have a service that's being used a lot in the disaster response, and because of that excessive traffic, it's being really slow. Monitor detects that service is being slow. You could then have Symphony either restart that service. It could also, for example, send you an email letting you know that service is being slow, it's receiving more requests than it's able to handle, and you could then do something like update the min and max number of instances so that it can handle more traffic. There's also probably going to be a lot of content that's generated during the disaster response. Some of it may contain sensitive information. You would want to make sure that information isn't being shared publicly. So you could use our tool to alert when sensitive information is shared publicly to detect, text matching, certain patterns or certain regular expressions. To deal with this large amount of content that's probably going to be created, you can create reports to keep track of changes to items, users, and groups over the course of the response, and get regular updates about things like what items are being created, or any other changes that are being made. And then, again, keeping your system, performing and making sure everything's up and running. You can also have tasks that are triggered by events in the server logs to, for example, let you know if a log with level severe occurs, and then, you can respond immediately and make sure that everything is up and running during the course of the disaster response.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Rachel. So with that said, we do have another question here we'd like to ask everybody in the chat. And that is, out of everything that Rachel just recapped there for us, which feature or functionality of Symphony for ArcGIS is most exciting to you? So I'm going to give everybody just a few moments here to have an opportunity to answer that question and think about it. I know we just covered quite a bit very quickly. But I've seen a lot of questions coming in. I do apologize. It does seem like a couple of people are perhaps not able to access the actual official Q&A button, but I assure you, if you put your questions in the chat, we do have people monitoring it and logging those and responding as they are coming through. So don't worry, we will make sure to get to as many of those questions as we can. We will be coming up on the Q&A section next. So if you have any of those questions, go ahead and get them ready, locked and loaded for us, and we will do our best to respond. If we do run out of time and there are still questions pending or anything else that even after the fact comes up, I will be putting in the information where you can reach out to us with those questions directly after the fact. So don't worry, this is not going to be your only opportunity to ask questions about the Symphony product. Looks like we've got a couple of responses coming in now. Very nice, very nice. And like I said, once again, the very next section we're going to get into is going to be our Q&A section. So make sure you think about some of those questions that you might have, and we'll make sure to get them addressed. So, all right. So with that said, looks like we've got quite a few responses that have come in. We'll leave the poll open for a little bit longer, just because I know that some of those are going to be pretty detailed because Symphony does cover a wide range of functions. But I am going to go ahead and open this up to the questions. And for that, I'm actually going to pass things over to Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. We have a couple of questions here. We have been answering them in the chat, but I wanted to give Rachel an opportunity to maybe expand on them or answer them out loud for everybody. We have one from Michael Jenkins that says, does Scheduler require admin tools to work? And if not, can it replace admin tools?
Yeah, so Symphony is completely independent of the other products. All of our products are independent of each other, so it does not require admin tools or interact with admin tools in any way. And they do have some different functionality. So Symphony, and particularly Scheduler, is more focused on things that you want to do on a regular basis. It also touches a lot of things like services and webhooks that our other products don't touch, whereas Admin Tools is more geared toward kind of one-time or on-demand functionality. So things like finding and replacing web map service URLs. That's generally something you only do once if like the domain name of your services changes or something like that. That's not really something you'd want to schedule. So they have slightly two different purposes. They each have their own thing. And they're not interacting with each other at all.
Thanks, Rachel. We have another one from Spencer Percival. Can Symphony query and list layers within services on other ArcGIS servers, not necessarily that are within Portal or ArcGIS Online?
Yeah, so Symphony can connect to any ArcGIS server regardless of whether or not it's federated. So you just put in the URL and the credentials. If your server is federated, you can within Symphony choose to use the token for the organization it's federated with as the token for the server. But if it's not federated, that's okay. It will generate its own token and you can do all of the same things.
Awesome. Also, we have Sean Diate. How comparable does Symphony act as Monitor? He hasn't used Monitor before, but he felt like it might be the same. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so Symphony and Monitor have two different purposes. Monitor is really focused on getting way deep under the hood with things like service performance. So like the number of requests that a service is receiving, the number of requests that are being dropped, things of that nature, and of alerting you to kind of performance issues with your ArcGIS system, whereas Symphony is more focused on interacting with items, users, groups, services, webhooks, things of that nature. So they touch, different parts of your organization. And, we went over how Symphony and Monitor can actually interact with each other as well. So, they do different things. One can't replace the other, but they can actually work together.
Thanks for explaining that in a little more detail. We have another question. This one's again from Michael Jenkins. He sent us some great questions. ArcGIS Server Manager Log Viewer. It treats the time elapsed as a text field, so you can't sort descending and find long-running requests. Does Symphony Server Log Viewer let you properly sort time elapsed?
Yeah, so we can take that, since we are looking at the logs data ourselves, we can take that string and convert it into a date format that would then allow you to sort by date and time, or also to filter by date and time. So, greater than, less than a certain amount of time.
We have a question from Monique Laragodia. She asked if Symphony can email users with certain criteria are met or when certain automated actions take place.
Yes, so Symphony can email users for example, based on a trigger, so something like a server log or a webhook. You can also have it email you at the end of a task. So when a task is complete, you can have it email you if the task succeeds, if the task fails. You can have it include, for example, a CSV of content that completed the task successfully versus content that completed the task that failed. And you can also email the owners of, for example, if you are doing some operation on items, you can email the owners of those items as well.
All right, I'm looking to see if there's any more questions in the chat. I'm not seeing any. That word cloud from the last poll was really cool. It's cool to see what people are excited about starting and stopping services. And just it's really cool to see what everybody's excited about. We had another question about licensing. We have a couple of different licensing models. It depends on the size of your organization. If you are interested, we'd love to talk to you one-on-one about what our licensing options are. If you want to reach out to, and we'll have a slide at the end that shows who to reach out to, but sales@geo-jobe.com. It's a great place to start. Rachel, I think that's all the questions, technical questions that we have now. Oh, we have one more just came in. How do you manage user access to Symphony? Is it standalone accounts or is it tied to enterprise accounts? Can I provide limited access to non-admin GIS staff? A couple of questions and one from Monique, who had a couple of great questions for us.
Yeah, so Symphony, so there's two ways to log into Symphony. You can log in with your ArcGIS credentials. So, your username and password from your organization. You can also, we have what are called internal users, which are users that the username and password is unique within Symphony. It's saved to the Symphony database. And, that can be whatever username and password you want, and that doesn't go through your organization. And we also have 3 different roles. So we have the super user role, which is super users can, run all tasks, access all resources. They can add and remove other users. They can add and remove connections to organizations. They can do everything. And then we have administrators, who administrators can do things like run tasks, but you can assign administrators only to certain organizations. So you can say this person can run tasks in our dev environment, but not in our prod environment. And then we also have the viewer role, which viewers can see everything. They can see the results of the tasks. They can see how the tasks are set up and, look at all the information, but they can't take any actions.
Thanks for answering those questions, Rachel. Tony, we're going to spin it back over to you to wrap us up.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll get that all taken care of. I did just see the question come through. Will the webinar be available after today from Seth? And yes, it is. We are planning for everyone who has registered for the event to receive a copy of the recording of this webinar after the fact. So you can expect to receive that information. So I also did earlier I heard the question about the licensing, and I dropped our sales@geojobe.com email into the chat for everybody. And I'll also have it on the slide here shortly. I do have another question, though, for everybody. One last question, I promise. And that is, based off what you've seen, the questions that we've answered, do you feel that Symphony would be a useful tool to you and your organization? And so while we're giving everybody an opportunity to answer that, I will bring up some of the options that we have. So we do, as Karen mentioned, most of the licensing is based off of the organization rather than a user-based model, but it does depend a bit on your organization and how you're intending to use it. And that's why we encourage you to reach out to sales@geojobe.com, just because then we're able to talk with you one-on-one, learn more about your organization, the issues that your organization may be facing in GIS, and how we can help fix that, because we do have way more than just this. In fact, this webinar is going to be the first in a series. So you can start to expect to see notifications from us on a monthly basis where we'll go over various products that we offer, things that our professional services teams working on, things that we have as far as our business partners. In fact, some of you may have seen some earlier ones. I know last year we did one with our partner Aerialsphere. So we do plan to offer a wide range of information to all of those in the GIS community so that we can try to help out as many people as possible. And I do see quite a few of those responses coming in. Fantastic. It seems like quite a few of you are indeed very interested in either learning more or trying it out, which is perfect because I do want to let everybody know we do offer trials of our products. So if you have an interest in testing out how this tool, Symphony, can assist you in your organization, once again, you can reach out to sales@geojobe.com. We'll be more than happy to set up a meeting, get you signed up for a trial. The trials are, completely free. There's no obligations. We just want to make sure that you have a chance to get your hands deep into it and really try it out and see how effective it can really make things for you. So once again, you can sign up for a trial or even just reach out with questions at sales@geo-jobe.com, just like you see on the screen here right now. And as a reminder, the Map This Bundle winner will be selected and contacted post-webinar. So we really appreciate everybody coming by today and joining us. So, once more, I just want to say thank you to everybody. On screen is a QR code to our website if you want to reach out for more information. But thank you all so much for attending. As I said earlier, a recording of this will be sent out to everybody who's joined us today. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help. There's so many things that we do here at GEO Jobe, and the more people that we can help, the better it is for everybody. So I really hope we'll be able to help a lot of you improve your workflows and make things a lot easier. And once again, thank you so much for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.